So I just saw Afterburn, which on the poster has the tagline, "The apocalypse isn't for everybody." Unfortunately, neither is this film. But let's break it down right now. After a massive solar flare destroys the Earth's eastern hemisphere, an emboldened treasure hunter for hire adventures to Europe to uncover the coveted Mona Lisa, only to learn the world needs a hero more than it needs a painting. Afterburn is directed by J.J. Perry, who previously directed Day Shift, to which I've maybe seen only the first 15 minutes, but does seem better than Afterburn. He's also directed The Killer's Game, which I've never even heard of until looking up J.J. Perry, and which also stars Dave Bautista and also looks better than Afterburn. So apparently this film is based on a comic that I've also never heard of, so I can't speak to how much of the source material is actually adapted for film or how much of it inspired the director's vision. But just purely based on what was put to screen, I would say the vision is pretty lackluster. I'm not sure there are any real themes to discuss, and it just seems like a movie that at bare minimum hopes to be entertaining, but without bringing the thought or effort to make that realized. The pacing was very erratic. At times it sped through the plot points, and at other times the dialogue or exposition would just grind us to a halt. And with all the padding of the runtime, with long shots of characters just walking or driving or staring at screens or assembling a rig, that starts to affect the tone, which, in the words of Scuttle,
got very boring.
That being said, tone was okay, I guess. I mean, it did fit the narrative, and every scene or performance felt like it did belong in the Afterburn world. It was just all pretty dull. Afterburn does try to follow some big classic film beats, like the opening has a fight sequence to hook the audience. There's a chase scene. There's a walk away in slow-mo with an explosion behind you shot. There's a Mission Impossible rope drop scene. There's the get the girl at the end and enjoy some product placement with a cold Stella Artois. Now, the execution of these were all very hokey, but as someone who actually does appreciate some of the classic structures and tropes in filmmaking, these were probably the only part that were somewhat enjoyable in a very pedestrian and forgettable movie. 1 of 5 for direction and vision. So when I think about the cinematography and visuals in this film, the first word that comes to mind is meh. The sets are meh. The backdrops are meh. Lighting and color are meh. Effects are bad. And wardrobe is meh. It's funny because I guess the visuals do actually fit the plot very well, but I guess if I had to make a distinction, I would say they don't serve the plot very well. Nothing visually is ever needed to tell the story. The fact that a large part of the plot happened in France wasn't significant at all. They just chose France. There was never any camera movement or framing that was used or needed to tell the story in a way that would make a lasting impact on the audience, or the characters for that matter. I mean, I guess the visuals are fine. They're professional enough, I suppose. Just incredibly mediocre. 1 of 5 for cinematography and visuals. So I'm not sure where to begin in regards to writing and storytelling. I guess I'll start with the story. It was just way too simple and predictable. There actually really wasn't any story at all, so you never care about the characters. Samuel Jackson's character was the only character that had a solid motivation or a legitimate rationale. Bautista's character's only motivation was money. That's right, the film's protagonist only wanted money. And not even so he could help his family or save his brother or some other admirable or empathetic reason. He literally just wanted to fix his boat. So we're talking first world problems during the apocalypse. Come to think of it, why would you need money at all in a post-apocalyptic world? But even if they had a story, the writing was so uninspired and, in my opinion, so lazy that it wouldn't have resonated very much anyway. Also, the plot was extremely plain and boring. And since the characters had zero internal motivation and only sought out the film's MacGuffin, the tension they tried to create was pretty meaningless and very uninteresting. The dialogue is pretty dull and the jokes aren't even corny, they're just weak. The film also doesn't delve into the how or why of this landscape at all. It sort of feels like they just figured, we've all seen post-apocalyptic films before, so just use your imagination. Lastly, there's a good amount of nonsensical actions or decisions that make this easy to check out on. Like at one point, they have a shootout with machine guns and turrets and everything, but it's all happening right in front of an atomic bomb and nobody hits it and nobody is even worried about hitting it. 1 of 5 for writing and storytelling. Before we get to the last 2 categories, please think about subscribing if you're enjoying this review. You don't even have to leave the video, just hit that icon down there and you're good to go. Thank you. Back to the review. Afterburn stars Dave Bautista, Samuel Jackson, Olga Kurylenko, and Christopher Haiju. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Bautista plays Jake, who was apparently a treasure hunter before the burn, whatever that means, and somehow he's qualified to go on this harrowing mission. Honestly, Dave Bautista's performance wasn't complete dog shit, but I would still consider it more bad than good. If he would have even brought half of the energy he did for the Drax character on Guardians of the Galaxy, this film would have been at least a little better. He just seemed very sleepy and uninterested, which made me sleepy and uninterested. The film does try to make us care about him a little by showing him have dreams about being on his boat in beautiful blue waters, but it didn't work. Christopher Haiju's character was the antagonist, but he was the stereotypical bad for the sake of bad type villain, which to me are the most boring villains, and his character definitely lived up to that for sure. His performance was actually decent, but his character has absolutely no depth and was just crazy boring. If you've seen the film Red One, he's just like his character on that, except without the cool makeup and without the interesting motivation and without the humor and fun. So practically identical. Olga's performance and character was very nondescript and easily forgettable, so moving on. Sam Jackson was by far and away the best performance and character in this film as King August. Like I said earlier, he was the only one that had a compelling motivation, and his performance to me was actually one of his better ones, or maybe I should say one of his more nuanced performances. I'm not sure I've seen Sam perform in this fashion, actually. Now, don't get excited. He's barely in the movie, which is a shame because it would have been so much better had they used his story more as a focal point and gave him a lot more screen time, but oh well. Shout out to Samuel Jackson. Love him or hate him, that guy takes on a lot of interesting roles and always brings the energy. In my opinion, he's kind of slept on as being one of the better actors of his time. And I know he plays a lot of similar type roles too, but if you look at his career, he's actually quite the chameleon. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Anyway, there was one more performance that I thought was pretty good, and that came from Kevin Eldon, who played Father Samson. At the end of the day, I get why they chose Dave Bautista for this part, but he's much better as Drax, and in my opinion, much better as a supporting actor. And had this film primarily focused on Sam Jack's character's world and had Bautista as a co-star that had to deal with the complexities of that story, I think Bautista's performance probably would have been a lot more palatable, but alas, man. Sam Jackson's performance almost lifted this section's score, but 1 of 5 for performances and characters. So like I said earlier, Afterburn was based on a comic book that I've never heard of, and if I had to guess, has a relatively small fan base compared to a lot of other comic book IP. And that's not even including the big boys like Marvel and DC. The impression I get after watching this is it's a cash grab, and I'm sure the producers hopes that this will catch fire and turn into a cinematic universe. And who knows, some films don't get popular until way after its initial release, so I guess we'll see. Anyway, the music does fit the film, but it's very generic. Most of it reminds me of 80s action flick music, but not as epic. The score was also fine, but a tad too dramatic for this film. I think I would recommend this movie if you want something to watch that you don't need to overthink, and maybe you're just trying to drift off to sleep. Do any of you remember that old Animaniacs cartoon where they had a guy named, I think, Perry Como, and he was singing the national anthem? That's the effect it had on me in the theater. 1 of 5 for overall execution and impact. All in all, that gives Afterburn a score of 5, which puts it onto my lowest ranking. Don't forget to check out my movie phone videos and get a fun, different take on movie reviews, new and old. Did you see Afterburn? What ranking would you give it? Let me hear it in the comments. If you'd like to see more of my Earnest and movie phone reviews, please subscribe for much more. Thank you for watching.